After 5 years at the Compliance Institute, Eleanor Vance had finally learned her lesson. On their wedding night, Julian Vance used Eleanor Vance's unaccommodating nature as an excuse to send her to the Compliance Institute. For 5 years, he neither visited nor inquired about her, and Eleanor Vance was further indoctrinated by the institute. Every man was a master. Eleanor Vance and the others performed the most debasing acts to please men. Seductive and erotic dances were their required lessons. To survive, Eleanor Vance and the others had to provide various services to guests at any time and any place. Finally, Julian Vance remembered Eleanor Vance. He appeared before Eleanor Vance, his arm around the waist of the woman he truly loved, putting on a show of deep affection. Eleanor Vance lowered her gaze. In 5 years, Eleanor Vance had long since learned the principle that men were paramount. She was brought before Julian Vance. Eleanor Vance mechanically knelt before him. She robotically repeated the gestures of prostrating herself and greeting him. "Sir, how may I serve you?" "Eleanor Vance can." Before she could finish, a harsh slap landed squarely on Eleanor Vance's face. Eleanor Vance softly repeated, "I'm sorry," as Julian Vance's grim voice came from above her. "Eleanor Vance. How can you be so pathetic? Kneeling to serve men. The more you act like this, Eleanor Vance will despise you even more." Eleanor Vance didn't respond, but bowed her head respectfully, listening to his reprimand. Perhaps finding it uninteresting, he grabbed Eleanor Vance by the neck, coldly warning her, "My parents are home these days. You'd better hide that demeanor. Don't let anyone think Eleanor Vance has wronged you." A searing pain shot through her throat, and a sickly sweet taste surged up. Eleanor Vance's face changed, and she nodded with difficulty. He released her, and Eleanor Vance forced the taste down, submissively saying, "Sir, rest assured, Eleanor Vance will do my part." Julian Vance's gaze was grim. He gave Eleanor Vance a deep look, then turned and got into his car. He had arrived in a sports car. Eleanor Vance stared blankly at the two-seater sports car, her gaze fixed on him. Scarlet haze bit her lower lip, looking utterly pitiful. She gently fiddled with Julian Vance's arm. "Julian, I'm sorry, Eleanor Vance forgot today was for picking up her. How about Eleanor Vance gets down and I'll just run back? It's not too far anyway." Her eyes welled up with tears of grievance, a sight that seemed to make Julian Vance's heart ache. He affectionately pinched Scarlet Hayes' cheek, a doting voice emanating from his throat. "This passenger seat is your exclusive seat. Who else would you give it to?" Eleanor Vance froze, an unbidden image surfacing in her mind. 18-year-old Julian Vance excitedly showed off his first car. He, holding a bouquet and a small diamond ring, knelt before me on one knee. "Ellie, will you be Eleanor Vance's girlfriend? From now on, you'll be the mistress of Eleanor Vance's car's passenger seat, your exclusive seat." Eleanor Vance smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes, and agreed. Eleanor Vance couldn't help but chuckle, looking at the faint indentation on her finger, a wave of emotion washing over her. This was too outlandish a dream. "What are you laughing at, Eleanor Vance? Eleanor Vance told you to run back yourself, understand?" Julian Vance's voice suddenly rose, his expression impatient. Eleanor Vance snapped back to reality. The sports car was already out of sight. Eleanor Vance silently looked at the cheap high heels on her feet, then took them off, and held them in her hand, walking back step by step. She hadn't walked this path in 5 years, yet it was deeply etched in Eleanor Vance's mind. Initially, Eleanor Vance had fantasized about escaping countless times, and acted on it. But ultimately, she gained nothing. Eleanor Vance was dragged back countless times, beaten, verbally abused, and publicly humiliated. They stripped her naked, insulted her with the most vulgar language. They publicly flogged her body. They berated Eleanor Vance until she was utterly broken. Time and again, Eleanor Vance's remaining dignity and courage to resist were eroded. At the estate gates, a security guard shoved Eleanor Vance away, his scornful gaze falling upon her. "Filthy beggar, get out. This isn't a place for you. Do you really think a bit of looks is enough to marry into wealth?" Eleanor Vance wanted to defend herself, but a stun gun was mercilessly pressed against her. Eleanor Vance winced in pain, tears shimmering in her eyes. This look was Eleanor Vance and the other's best shield at the institute. He froze, the smile on his lips widening even further. He dropped the stun gun and lunged at Eleanor Vance. "What are you standing around for?" Julian Vance's voice interrupted the security guard. The smile on his face stiffened slightly, and he looked embarrassed. "Mr. Vance, Eleanor Vance." He glanced at Eleanor Vance, as if he'd found a way out of the situation. He frantically pointed at Eleanor Vance, accusing, "Mr. Vance, this person came out of nowhere to get in." She even tried to seduce Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance was just trying to teach her a lesson. As he finished speaking, Julian Vance's disgusted gaze fixed directly on Eleanor Vance. He kicked Eleanor Vance, his expression impatient, that desperate. Can't live without a man. Eleanor, you're truly vile. Eleanor Vance gave a bitter laugh, kneeling on the ground, her voice trembling. Sir, please don't be angry. It's my fault. Your servant's fault. Master, please punish me. Julian Vance was completely enraged. He casually grabbed Eleanor Vance, his face contorted in a grimace. Servant. How pathetic. Security guard, she's all yours, guards. He violently threw Eleanor Vance to the ground, then walked away with Scarlet Hayes. Eleanor Vance sighed softly, then turned around to face the security guards, their eyes gleaming. Before they could make a move, she proactively began to undress herself. In an instant, Eleanor Vance's heart pounded wildly. Eleanor Vance's world instantly went dark. The security guards' panicked voices came from nearby. No, this has nothing to do with Eleanor Vance and us. Don't frame Eleanor Vance and us. When she woke up again, Eleanor Vance was lying in a hospital. Robert Vance and Patricia Vance were beside her. Seeing Eleanor Vance wake up, Patricia Vance hugged Eleanor Vance and sobbed bitterly. Ellie, why didn't you say anything when you were sick? Eleanor Vance was stunned for a long time, her voice somewhat stiff. It's just a chronic condition, that's all. Eleanor Vance said no more. Eleanor Vance wasn't accustomed to such concern. After regaining a little strength, Eleanor Vance went to the doctor's office. She interrupted the doctor who was about to discuss her condition with her parents, and called him out. He looked seriously at Eleanor Vance. You shouldn't bear this alone. They are your parents, they need to know your condition. Eleanor Vance's thoughts momentarily drifted back, and someone's voice seemed to come from a distant place. Parents. Being allowed to call them, that is a charity. You're just our dog, bought by the Vance family, understand? Eleanor Vance's face subtly changed. She pressed her lips together, her voice trembling slightly. No, they are not Eleanor Vance's parents. Please, doctor, help conceal Eleanor Vance's condition. The doctor said no more. After a long silence, he sighed. Eleanor Vance, we'll keep an eye out for a matching heart for you. If a match can be found within a month, you might still live. Eleanor Vance said nothing, just gave a bitter laugh and left. At the Vance family estate, Julian Vance, returning from outside, did not see Eleanor Vance. He flew into a rage, calling all the security guards. What good are you? What's going on? You can't even handle one woman. Why don't you take off these clothes and quit being security guards? They exchanged glances, explaining in a panic. Mr. Vance, that woman fainted. Eleanor Vance and we were afraid of facing homicide charges. Julian Vance froze slightly. Eleanor Vance finally entered the Vance family estate with the support of her parents. Seeing the scene, they were about to get angry, but were stopped by Julian Vance. He, forcing a smile, said, Mom and Dad, don't be angry. Eleanor Vance just couldn't find Ellie for a moment, and got a bit impatient. He then signaled Eleanor Vance with his eyes to smooth things over. Eleanor Vance smiled slightly, nodding blankly. Robert Vance and Patricia Vance handed Eleanor Vance over to Julian Vance before leaving. Only Eleanor Vance and he remained in the villa. He slapped Eleanor Vance's face, his expression cold and desolate. Eleanor Vance, playing the victim in front of Eleanor Vance's parents. Truly pathetic. As he yanked Eleanor Vance up, the medical report she was carrying instantly floated down. Eleanor Vance and he simultaneously fixed their gazes on that piece of paper. Julian Vance picked up the paper before Eleanor Vance could. He frowned deeply as he looked at the medical report. The next moment, the phone rang. Scarlet Hayes' voice came from the other end. Julian, big sister got a medical report for heart failure from the doctor. Is there something wrong with her mind? That whiny, pathetic remark immediately made Julian Vance's face darken. He hung up the phone and looked at Eleanor Vance with a chilling gaze. After a moment, he smiled, and an inexplicable chill rose in Eleanor Vance. Your deception skills have really improved. Even Eleanor Vance almost fell for your tricks. Aren't you suffering from heart failure? Then how about Eleanor Vance has someone send you to the haunted house attraction? Eleanor Vance froze. Before she could resist, he had already contacted the security guard. At the amusement park, Julian Vance and Scarlet Hayes watched Eleanor Vance enter the haunted house attraction. Eleanor Vance heard him instruct the manager, gather all the staff and let her enjoy some dignified treatment inside. Eleanor Vance gave a bitter laugh. Who would want such treatment? Scarlet Hayes' laughter drifted in from outside, sounding even more chilling than the ghosts. Julian, you're so naughty. Julian Vance smiled, his voice full of endless tenderness. Didn't you want to watch a horror movie? Isn't this one right here? Isn't it better than those filmed ones? The words, a clown, instantly imprinted themselves in Eleanor Vance's mind. During her first month at the institute, Eleanor Vance had met Scarlet Hayes. She arrogantly placed her phone in front of Eleanor Vance. Julian Vance's and her grand public announcement was still trending on trending topics. The reporter asked, "We heard Mr. Vance once had a childhood sweetheart. Is this the person beside you?" He smiled, embracing Scarlett Hayes, a mocking smile on his lips. "The one beside Eleanor Vance is Eleanor Vance's true love. A childhood sweetheart. That's just a clown." Even though she had long lost all expectations, a chill still ran through her at that moment. The moment she came to, a ghost with a green face and fangs hung down from above her head. Eleanor Vance was startled and couldn't help but scream. The torment wasn't over yet. A myriad of methods emerged one after another. Eleanor Vance found a corner and stayed there quietly, her heart pounding. Perhaps they were getting anxious out there, not seeing Eleanor Vance's performance. What followed was one scare after another. Finally, Eleanor Vance lost control and fainted. All sounds around her immediately disappeared. The next day, Eleanor Vance was finally released. Julian Vance did not appear. He sent a message to Eleanor Vance, "Your performance was terrible, it didn't entertain us at all. As punishment for these 3 days, you find somewhere to stay for 3 days, your card has been deactivated." Eleanor Vance pursed her lips. Kicked out of the amusement park, Eleanor Vance suddenly felt utterly bored. Before she could fully regain her senses, a group of people suddenly rushed out. They surrounded Eleanor Vance, and some even reached out, tearing at Eleanor Vance's clothes, trying to strip her naked. Lowlife being a mistress, truly shameless. "Oh, playing rough, are we? Got tattoos too, huh? Eleanor Vance, look, poor, ha 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 ha." Unrestrained laughter echoed in Eleanor Vance's ears. Eleanor Vance tightly wrapped her clothes around herself. In an instant, a sense of grievance flooded her heart, and tears broke loose. All Eleanor Vance wanted was to live a good life. Gradually, Eleanor Vance's strength drained away, and she slowly gave up resisting. The world before her gradually grew dim. A sharp pain shot through her heart, and Eleanor Vance couldn't help but lie on the ground, convulsing. Big Sister Scarlett and Mr. Vance only said to teach Eleanor Vance and us a lesson, not to take a life. "Quick, let's go. If she blames us, we'll never be able to explain ourselves." The crowd dispersed, and Eleanor Vance, enduring the pain, dialed the doctor's phone. Before Eleanor Vance could ask for help, the doctor's voice came from the other end, "We have a matching heart." When she woke up in the hospital, Eleanor Vance immediately drafted the divorce papers and sent it over via a courier. The doctor instructed Eleanor Vance, "Rest well and prepare. The surgery is in 3 days." Eleanor Vance nodded quietly. For the past 2 days, she had been repeatedly undergoing various examinations, preparing for the surgery. A secret joy surprisingly arose in Eleanor Vance's heart. Eleanor Vance was probably about to be reborn. Once on the operating table, Eleanor Vance's anxious heart finally settled. Halfway through the surgery, Eleanor Vance, under anesthesia, clearly heard the doctor's irritable voice. "What do you mean the heart's gone? Was it transferred to someone else who needed it? Are you crazy? Eleanor Vance's surgery is halfway done, and the organ is gone. How do you expect Eleanor Vance to explain this to the patient?" Tears fell from Eleanor Vance's eyes. After all, she couldn't escape fate. The doctor could only perform the sutures as calmly as possible. Eleanor Vance was sent out of the operating room. As she regained consciousness, Eleanor Vance saw a message from Scarlett Hayes. "Eleanor Vance knows you need a heart, but I'm sorry. Julian has already promised to use the heart for Eleanor Vance's brother." Eleanor Vance's chest ached, as if her throat had been squeezed, leaving her breathless. The doctor looked at Eleanor Vance apologetically, his voice a little softer. Eleanor Vance shook her head slightly. "It's all right, it's just fate." "Doctor, thank you." "Eleanor Vance, I'm not going to seek treatment anymore." Julian Vance, who had received the divorce papers, fell silent. He irritably took out his phone, sending messages and making calls to Eleanor Vance. Without exception, there was no reply. He snatched the divorce papers, tearing them to shreds. The courier, expressionless, produced another copy. "Miss Lynn said you must sign these divorce papers. Eleanor Vance here has prepared 100 copies. If you don't want to sign, you can keep tearing them up." Julian Vance was now calm. He carefully put away the divorce papers in his hand, and looked at the courier. "Where's she?" The courier shook his head. His task complete, he turned and left. Scarlett Hayes' eyes flashed with surprise as she looked at the divorce papers on the table. She excitedly tried to pick up the agreement and examine it closely. But she was shoved away by Julian Vance. "Let go." She fell to the ground, her back hitting hard against the stairs on the first floor. She couldn't help but cry out in pain, but no one responded. Scarlett Hayes rushed over and snatched the divorce papers from Julian Vance's hand, only to be slapped down to the ground by him once more. Her hand tightened around the divorce papers, and a flicker of resentment flashed in her eyes. Julian Vance, are you still thinking about Eleanor Vance? What a pity, you'll never be able to earn her forgiveness in this lifetime. Her heart failure is real, and the heart was personally given by you to Eleanor Vance's brother. She burst into laughter. The sound echoed in Julian's ears like a demonic chant, replaying over and over, as if reminding Julian of his own foolishness. He tightly squeezed Scarlett Hayes' neck, his voice slightly trembling. Scarlett Hayes, you're a goddamn psycho. He anxiously walked out of the villa, searching house by house for Eleanor Vance's presence. But unfortunately, he found nothing in the end. Eleanor Vance was unaware of Julian Vance's strange behavior. At this moment, Eleanor Vance was enjoying a moment of peace in Eleanor Vance's life. However, Julian Vance's appearance disrupted Eleanor Vance's peaceful life. He appeared before Eleanor Vance, breathless. Eleanor Vance's expression remained unperturbed. Ellie, we're going to the hospital. Eleanor Vance found it somewhat amusing and ignored him. Eleanor Vance, do you have to make Eleanor Vance and me feel guilty? Don't you know? Mom and Dad are very worried about you. Julian Vance's voice choked. It seemed he was channeling his own emotions through his parents, expressing them collectively. But was that possible? Eleanor Vance gave a self-deprecating smile and turned to leave. Eleanor Vance, I'm just a worthless life, who would worry about me? His expression stiffened slightly, and he quickly stepped forward. He reached out and grabbed Eleanor Vance's wrist. Eleanor Vance struggled forcefully, but she couldn't break free. Finally, Eleanor Vance was exhausted, and a sharp pain from her heart caused Eleanor Vance to faint. When she woke again, the sterile white hospital room and the unique smell of disinfectant made Eleanor Vance frown. Julian Vance stood up from Eleanor Vance's bedside and frantically went to find the doctor. Only then did Eleanor Vance clearly see his appearance at that moment. His beard was unkempt and dark circles dominated the area beneath his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he had been crying. Doctor, Eleanor Vance's wife is awake. Please take a look. Eleanor Vance couldn't help but frown. As she spoke, her voice was hoarse. Julian Vance, Eleanor Vance and I are divorced. He didn't look at Eleanor Vance, instead, he looked earnestly at the doctor. The doctor shook his head slightly and left the room. When he returned, he dared not meet Eleanor Vance's gaze, instead averting his eyes again and again. Eleanor Vance finally grew impatient. Julian Vance, Eleanor Vance truly doesn't need your false kindness. Eleanor Vance is already dying. Shouldn't all the past be written off? Grabbing his sleeve, Eleanor Vance stared intently at him. He panicked. Written off? It can't be written off. Eleanor Vance, you were the one who abandoned me back then. Are you going to abandon me again now? Eleanor Vance paused, a little bewildered. He looked at Eleanor Vance, slowly articulating his unwillingness. Back then, Eleanor Vance and I were so in love. Why did you just abandon Eleanor Vance like that? I just wanted you to learn how to love. Eleanor Vance gave a hollow laugh. Memories flooded her mind, yet her smile held a touch of bitterness. That year, he failed in his startup. Eleanor Vance should have stayed by his side. But her parents passed away one after another abroad, and Eleanor Vance had no choice but to temporarily leave him and come to a foreign land. The reality was far from as easy as she imagined. Eleanor Vance went through immense trouble to retrieve her parents' remains. These consecutive blows had already left Eleanor Vance's heart with a chronic ailment. When she returned to his side, things had changed beyond recognition. After a long while, Eleanor Vance let out a soft laugh. Eleanor Vance also wants to live, but the only hope was personally destroyed by you. Do you still think Eleanor Vance can live? His eyes red, he pulled Eleanor Vance into his embrace. Eleanor Vance's body stiffened, instinctively recoiling. His grip gradually tightened, and Eleanor Vance was held firmly in his arms. Memories of the institute flooded her mind, and Eleanor Vance trembled uncontrollably, her heart throbbing with intense pain. He came to his senses and hastily released Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance couldn't help but say in a trembling voice, "Get out. Julian Vance, don't make me hate you." He uncontrollably leaned back slightly, seemingly unsteady on his feet. He wanted to say something more, but the doctor arrived. He sternly asked Julian Vance to leave. "Mr. Vance, if you truly want your wife to live, then leave, and don't agitate her." Julian Vance relented. After a long pause, he said hoarsely, "All right, Eleanor Vance will leave then. Ellie, you rest well." Eleanor Vance turned her head away, choosing not to look at him. A vague, indescribable sadness settled in her heart. Julian Vance sighed softly, then turned and left. However, he didn't go far, sitting on a chair in the corridor outside the hospital room. "The mistress room is over here. I found her." A voice from not far away startled Julian Vance awake. Before he could react, he saw a group of people rushing into the hospital room. Ashley, even more arrogantly, threw a stack of photographs in front of Eleanor Vance. Hey, you're this old and still being a mistress. Aren't you a bit too shameless? I heard you used to be a cheap plaything for people. These photographs must be yours, right? If you don't want your reputation ruined, stay away from Mr. Vance and Big Sister Scarlett's lives. The photographs were scattered with a wave of her hand. Those unbearable images were like a knife piercing Eleanor Vance's heart. Before Eleanor Vance could feel the pain, she saw a crowd of people swarming in behind her. Mock funeral wreaths, morbid cards, and disturbing effigies. These items were all thrown into Eleanor Vance's hospital room, and the normally spacious room was instantly filled. After a long moment, Eleanor Vance looked at Ashley without a change in expression. Eleanor Vance and Julian Vance were once husband and wife. In the future, there will be no relationship. Eleanor Vance will certainly not interfere in others' relationships by being a mistress. The girl paused, her expression turning somewhat ferocious. She grabbed an object and swung it at her. At a time like this, you still want to slander Scarlett? You truly are a whore. Julian Vance, his face darkened, grabbed the object from her hand and threw it aside. She froze slightly. Realizing who it was, her joyful words were cut short by Julian Vance's harsh blow. The girl was pushed to the ground, the knife she had intended to use now less than a centimeter away from her. Mr. Vance. Her voice was somewhat panicked. Julian Vance's voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. His cold voice held no emotion at this moment. Eleanor Vance and Eleanor Vance are husband and wife. In this relationship, I am the one at fault. Scarlett is the mistress, I am the scumbag, and the only one not at fault is the whore you speak of. If you want trouble, Eleanor Vance is always ready. This statement was even personally uploaded by him to social media. It quickly became trending explosively. The girl was scared. This outcome was somewhat unexpected. She stammered again, well, that doesn't change the fact that she's a common slut. Julian Vance froze. His gaze fell upon the photographs on the ground. He touched them with a trembling hand. Before Eleanor Vance could stop him, he had already begun to flip through them, one by one. The photographs showed Eleanor Vance dancing provocatively, some prostrate on the ground, others displaying themselves for the camera. Each flip seemed to drain a bit more strength from his body. Until the last photograph was viewed, he finally couldn't hold back his sobs. He slammed a fist violently on the ground, cursing under his breath, bastard. I'm such a goddamn monster. After a long time, he composed himself. His gaze swept over everyone present, and he immediately dialed the police. The group was taken away. He said coldly, since you don't know how to respect people, then you should learn the principles of being human. The group of troublemaking girls was taken away. No matter how they cried and cursed, Julian Vance showed no mercy. The hospital room quieted down. The morbid effigies and other disturbing items were removed. He walked to Eleanor Vance's side, gently wanting to touch Eleanor Vance's body. Eleanor Vance instinctively recoiled, looking directly at him. You're tainted. Julian Vance's expression froze. After a long moment, he murmured, yes, Eleanor Vance is tainted. Ellie, I'm sorry. Eleanor Vance didn't know it would be like this. Eleanor Vance will give you an explanation. Eleanor Vance didn't want to pay attention to Julian Vance. He left in a hurry, looking furious, probably intending to confront someone. Eleanor Vance didn't want to bother. She just wanted to immerse herself in her own small world. For many days, Julian Vance did not appear. She even gradually forgot his existence. But Eleanor Vance's physical condition was also not good. After undergoing several surgeries consecutively, Eleanor Vance was already exhausted. The doctor even began to put Eleanor Vance on a ventilator. Seeing the increasing gloom of those around her, Eleanor Vance couldn't help but smile. Eleanor Vance's life has been too bitter. Eleanor Vance will soon be free. You should be happy for Eleanor Vance. Besides, my family is waiting for me. At her words, everyone in the room burst into laughter through their tears. Everyone implicitly let the matter drop. Later, Eleanor Vance's mental state also weakened. Just as Eleanor Vance was about to fall asleep, Julian Vance suddenly burst into Eleanor Vance's hospital room. He was breathless, a hint of anxiety in his eyes. Ellie, are you feeling any better? Eleanor Vance has reported and shut down the Compliance Institute. His apologetic gaze remained fixed on Eleanor Vance, making Eleanor Vance feel a bit uncomfortable. Oh, his expression stiffened slightly. Sensing Eleanor Vance's lack of interest, he adjusted his demeanor and vividly recounted to Eleanor Vance how he had outwitted the people from the institute, and he tried his best to describe the miserable state of those people. Eleanor Vance still didn't want to pay attention. Until he said, for those girls who helped you, Eleanor Vance helped them find jobs. They shouldn't end up on the streets now, and they're very worried about you. Eleanor Vance's eyes brightened. Thinking of the girls from the institute, a warmth surfaced in Eleanor Vance's eyes. They hadn't gone to that place willingly, they had been sold or tricked into it for various reasons. Every escape attempt had countless sisters' efforts behind it. Although they failed, this bond of camaraderie was indestructible. Eleanor Vance had a slight smile on her face, and sincerely thanked him. "Thank you for saving Eleanor Vance, and us." His body stiffened slightly. He gave a bitter laugh and said no more. The atmosphere in the hospital room fell silent, but Eleanor Vance didn't care. Eleanor Vance was already so tired. Just as she was about to fall asleep, there was a knock on the hospital room door. Eleanor Vance and Julian Vance simultaneously looked towards the door. The person outside had already rushed in. His expression changed slightly. Before he could stop her, Scarlet Hayes knelt at his feet. Her pant leg was clutched tightly, smeared with tears. Scarlet Hayes clung to Julian Vance's thigh, weeping. "Julian, you can't do this to Eleanor Vance. Please, just give Eleanor Vance a way out, okay? Considering Eleanor Vance has been with you for so long, can Eleanor Vance and I just..." Julian Vance sneered, then kicked her over. Scarlet Hayes' back hit the wall hard, but Julian Vance showed no inclination to be gentle. All that was heard was Scarlet Hayes' cry of pain. Eleanor Vance's gaze also unfocused, resting on Scarlet Hayes. Her venomous gaze swept over Eleanor Vance. The next moment, she murmured, "Eleanor Vance, it's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Eleanor Vance wouldn't have been humiliated by so many men, nor would Eleanor Vance have lost Julian's favor. If it weren't for you, Eleanor Vance's brother wouldn't have died. Yes, Eleanor Vance, as long as you die, everything will return to normal." Eleanor Vance's eyes widened slightly. She instinctively wanted to avoid it, but Eleanor Vance had no strength to move at all. Julian Vance was enraged. He picked up a kitchen knife from nearby and violently stabbed her. In an instant, blood stained her clothes. Scarlet Hayes, filled with resentment and unwillingness, cast a look at Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance didn't care about any of this. Soon, she was dragged out of the room like a dead fish. Eleanor Vance couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Looking at a face like that truly ruined her appetite, and made her uncomfortable. Julian Vance only glanced at Eleanor Vance, and said nothing more. He stayed quietly by Eleanor Vance's side. No matter what Eleanor Vance did, he remained worried and inseparable. Eleanor Vance gradually felt annoyed. Eleanor Vance couldn't help but raise her voice, speaking to Julian Vance. "Julian Vance, can you stay away from Eleanor Vance? Do you know how annoying you are?" His eyes reddened, seemingly hurt by Eleanor Vance's words. But he only clenched his fist slightly, then smiled at Eleanor Vance. "If Ellie wants Eleanor Vance to stay further away, Eleanor Vance will just go far away. If anything happens, you can call. Eleanor Vance is always here." He turned to leave. Eleanor Vance pursed her lips. After a moment, Eleanor Vance finally spoke. "Eleanor Vance truly needs you." He had brightened, and his entire mood lifted. "Eleanor Vance and I have already signed the divorce papers. It's time to finalize the divorce." Eleanor Vance clearly saw the light in his eyes extinguish after she spoke those words. A faint shimmer of tears appeared in his eyes. Eleanor Vance felt no emotional response whatsoever. Being Julian Vance's wife was too difficult, and this path was too long and dark, so Eleanor Vance truly wanted to give up. He didn't speak for a long time. He silently met Eleanor Vance's gaze. Finally, he relented. His voice was uncontrollably low and dejected. "Eleanor Vance hasn't signed yet." Eleanor Vance smiled indifferently. "No rush. Just sign it before we head to City Hall. Also, Eleanor Vance doesn't want her belongings." His body slumped. He turned and walked outside. His steps quickened. It seemed he wanted to escape that place. Soon after, Julian Vance's sobbing bitterly could be heard from outside. Eleanor Vance looked out the window, her gaze distant, not returning to reality for a long time. When he returned, he had already composed himself, and Eleanor Vance had also put on her clothes. Her formerly somewhat snug clothes now hung loosely on Eleanor Vance's body. Eleanor Vance looked at her pale face through the mirror, and couldn't help but smile. She simply put on some lipstick, then called Julian Vance, and they departed. Along the way, Eleanor Vance surprisingly had some energy. Although there was clearly nothing to say, Julian Vance desperately tried to find a topic for conversation. Finally, he asked the question that had troubled him for years. "Back then, why did you leave Eleanor Vance? Was there anything Eleanor Vance did wrong back then?" Eleanor Vance smiled and shook her head, her gaze fixed on him. Her previous regrets were now replaced by a sense of acceptance. "No, it was just a coincidence. Back then, my parents passed away one after another abroad. Eleanor Vance had to find the real culprit and retrieve her parents' remains, which took a lot of effort. When the matters abroad were concluded and Eleanor Vance returned, you were already famous and successful, and no longer needed Eleanor Vance." As soon as she said this, Julian Vance was completely dazed. He remained silent throughout the journey, saying nothing more. It wasn't until she received the divorce certificate that a huge weight lifted from Eleanor Vance's heart. He looked at Eleanor Vance, hesitant to speak. Can Eleanor Vance still take care of you? He choked up, staring at Eleanor Vance without blinking. Eleanor Vance looked up at the sky. Today was bright and sunny. Eleanor Vance hoped it would be the same in the future. Eleanor Vance gently smiled and shook her head. I'm sorry, that's really not appropriate. I wish your future to be bright and happy. Eleanor Vance left the hospital. She only left behind the money Eleanor Vance would need for the next few days and found a secluded cottage to stay in alone. However, there was a neighbor next door. It was strange, she had never seen them, yet they inexplicably always came to care for Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance was puzzled. But it no longer held much significance. Eleanor Vance's lucid moments were growing fewer. Eleanor Vance found a sunny and breezy afternoon, quietly lay on a lounge chair, and swallowed all the pills at once. In a daze, Eleanor Vance seemed to see Mom and Dad came to take her home. Eleanor Vance smiled. Soon, Eleanor Vance's beautiful dream was shattered by a sobbing voice. It seemed to be Julian Vance's voice. He said, Ellie, please hold on, okay? There's still so much in this world worth living for. Ellie, Eleanor Vance has made up for all the birthday gifts missed over the years. They're your favorite rare books. Ellie, don't fall asleep. Eleanor Vance has found a matching heart for you. You're saved. Each Ellie made Eleanor Vance frown. Too noisy. Eleanor Vance wanted to reach out and push him away, but ultimately she had no strength to do so. The light that was once there had, for some reason, turned into complete darkness. Eleanor Vance could only laugh at Julian Vance's annoying and irritating voice from within the darkness. Until the very end. Eleanor Vance woke up. But Eleanor Vance had somehow returned to the hospital. This time, the hospital room was filled with people. The doctor looked at Eleanor Vance with some surprise. You're awake. You really did get your life back this time. Eleanor Vance gave a helpless smile, but the smile on her lips grew even more bitter. Eleanor Vance doesn't want to reclaim this life. It's too tainted and too tiring. Julian Vance, standing nearby, had tried his best to minimize his presence, but Eleanor Vance still spotted him at a glance. Eleanor Vance looked at him, her voice tinged with coldness. Julian Vance, you shouldn't take matters into your own hands. His body stiffened, and he pressed his lips together, saying nothing. Before Eleanor Vance could fully react, he knelt straight down before Eleanor Vance. His bloodshot eyes were proof enough of the torment in his heart. Ellie, Eleanor Vance knows Eleanor Vance is selfish, but Eleanor Vance truly wants you to live, whether it's for Eleanor Vance to atone, or for Eleanor Vance too. Eleanor Vance just wants you to live well. Seeing Eleanor Vance's indifference, he decisively banged his head against the floor. One after another, until his forehead was red and swollen, blood seeping onto the floor, Eleanor Vance remained unmoved. The doctor couldn't bear to watch and spoke up to persuade her. How about you keep trying? Perhaps there really will be a miracle. Mr. Vance has searched for countless people, going door to door for matches. A suitable heart should be available very soon. Eleanor Vance stared intently at the doctor. Leaving aside whether there's a suitable heart, even if there is, how can Eleanor Vance guarantee Eleanor Vance will live longer? If not, what's the point of Eleanor Vance's persistence? Eleanor Vance is so sad, so much pain, Eleanor Vance just wants to feel a little better. The doctor sighed. Eleanor Vance, however, didn't take these matters to heart. For several days, Julian Vance did not appear in Eleanor Vance's hospital room. But he remained very close to Eleanor Vance's life. Every day, he would just stay outside the door, handing Eleanor Vance's food to the nurse, secretly hiding outside, listening to Eleanor Vance's conversations with the nurse. It wasn't that Eleanor Vance hadn't heard his presence, it was just that Eleanor Vance didn't want to get too close to him. One day, Eleanor Vance felt very good. She got up, packed a small bag, and walked towards the cemetery. Eleanor Vance had reserved an excellent spot for herself early on, right beside her parents' graves. Mom and Dad, your daughter is coming to find you. Eleanor Vance quietly knelt before her parents' graves. The smiles on their faces remained, untouched by the passage of time. Faintly, Eleanor Vance seemed to hear her parents' voices. Ellie, Eleanor Vance and I are here to pick you up. Eleanor Vance smiled and ran towards the two figures, bathed in light. At that moment, tears streamed down her face. Mom and Dad, from now on, I won't feel pain anymore. After Eleanor Vance died, Julian Vance became utterly despondent. He personally handled her funeral arrangements, though in truth, Eleanor Vance hadn't wanted him to handle it. He sat idly in the haunted house attraction day after day, and also hired many staff members, endlessly repeating what he had done to Eleanor Vance when he first brought her back from the institute. Gradually, his mind grew hazy. Robert Vance and Patricia Vance were even more worried. Finally, they couldn't stand it anymore and rushed into the haunted house attraction. They slapped Julian Vance hard on the face, their voices filled with anguish. Look at yourself now. Are you even human anymore? Do you look like a person? Julian Vance, if Ellie saw you like this, how heartbroken would she be? Robert Vance and Patricia Vance's words clearly did not awaken Julian Vance. He smashed the wine bottle in his hand onto the ground, crying and laughing. She's heartbroken. Even if Eleanor Vance died, Eleanor Vance wouldn't feel even a tiny bit of pain. Mom, do you know? She wished Eleanor Vance a bright and happy future. But without her, where's the brightness in Eleanor Vance's future? Happiness. That's even more unattainable. The two elders exchanged a look, then finally sighed. In an instant, they seemed to have aged 10 years, but this outcome is your own doing. Son, you should look forward. Having said that, the two elders supported each other and walked outside. They no longer paid attention to Julian Vance. Finally, Julian Vance went insane. Day after day, he held Eleanor Vance's photographs, whispering the sweetest words of love. Someone tried to separate him from the photographs, but received a torrent of abuse from Julian Vance. He said, Eleanor Vance's wife is the kindest, cutest person in the world and loves Eleanor Vance the most. No one can separate Eleanor Vance and me. Are you jealous that Eleanor Vance has a wife and you don't, making you green with envy? Jealous freaks, go away. Eleanor Vance's wife doesn't like jealous freaks. As a result, later on, anyone who mentioned Julian Vance would only speak ill of him. He's just a lunatic, why bother with him, Mr. Vance? Eleanor Vance scoffed. That's all ancient history. Now he's just a madman. Have you ever seen a normal person calmly slash their own face? His wife died long ago, yet he acts like he still has one every single day. Finally, on a winter night, 10 years later, Julian Vance lucidly realized Eleanor Vance had passed away. He sobbed bitterly, tears streaming down his face.